Hello and welcome to the
Hello,
Lucky Brain
friend.
Tumor
Woo,
podcast.
woo.
I'm Emily Truel and I am delighted to have with me today Zoe.
Hello, friend.
Thanks for joining me for this episode, Zoe.
So good to be here. On the other
Awesome.
side, the last time we had a chat, I was trying to figure out what on earth to do with my situation. So feels
Well,
good.
why don't we start with that? Why don't you tell me about
Yes.
like getting diagnosed and making those decisions?
Man, I feel like it's almost, and I think a lot of people feel this way, it's almost a grieving period. You go through this shock of like, when you go into an MRI, you're like, I always have anxiety with tests and things, but I definitely did not think I was going to get that result. I don't think anybody really thinks that that's going to happen to them. And so when I got my MRI results, I was like, I just shut down. I mean, I had a little boy. I have a little boy, but he was 2 at the time, so he was real little. And I think that was my first thought of like, this is not the time. I don't have time for this. And I think a lot of mothers feel that way of just like, you shut down, you almost feel like a scared animal. Like you're like, I have to find the answer. And the hard part with a lot of health things is there's not always an answer. There's options, but it's not just going to go away. And I think realizing it wasn't just going to go away took me some time of like literally grieving and having to allow myself to process it, which was the nice thing about this diagnosis. I guess if there's a nice thing is I wasn't personally having to rush into surgery. I did have time to let this sink in and do some research and talk to people like you. So
Yeah. How big was your tumor when you were diagnosed?
when I was diagnosed, it was about 1.6 centimeters.
Mhm.
And I was diagnosed after having some hearing loss. And I'm a musician. So I was kind of like, I guess, more aware of like, why can't I hear stereo properly? Or if I was laying on my pillow, I wasn't able to hear my child in the same sorry, allergies to the same degree. And I was like, well, that's not good. I had just gotten well, so I thought maybe I was just having a cold symptoms or something. You kind of just try to explain things away, I guess. But then I was trying to do some yoga, and I was like, I can't balance anymore on one foot, and I usually can, and I'm falling over. This is not good. So I went to my doctor, and they sent me to an ENT, and I was like, can't you just like give me some antibiotics or something? Like, what do you mean I need an MRI? So think I was in denial for a bit.
I think we all are. I think we rationalize it and we're like, oh, well, yeah, I was sick or I had an ear infection or, because it doesn't feel that wrong. It doesn't feel like there's a brain tumor.
Right. Well, and it hit me though, because I was like, wait, I've been complaining about one side of my face having twitching for like a year. And I was like, I wonder if that has anything, and it did. So there were a few things that I was kind of like, oh, okay, that makes sense now. But it's especially with a rare thing, you have to do so much research. And as wonderful as support groups are, they're very supportive, but there's also things on there. You're kind of in the Wild West in a way. You're kind of in anything social media wise. You have to remind yourself that there's going to be good things. There's going to be people having the hardest day of their life talking about it because that's what support groups are for. That's totally fair. But as a newly diagnosed person, putting on your awareness cap of like, I can't personalize everyone's stories because everyone's different. And there's a lot of people that one thing someone told me, because I talked to a bunch of people, but you were one of them that just really gave me this pillar of like, well, they're here still. I'm going to be okay. You know, it is often that people get treatment for these and they move on and then that's it. They don't think about it anymore. Um, they're not here talking about it on social media. They've just moved on with their life. And that did bring me some comfort in knowing that there's people out there that are okay and I'll probably be okay. But it's just, I think whether you have children or not, there's something about having kids that gives you this extra layer of like, I can't, how am I protecting them from this? It's other people's emotions in general. When you get a diagnosis, it's difficult. I hear this from friends of mine that have various diagnoses, is that a lot of the difficulty that they go through emotionally is trying to navigate other people's emotions.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It's really hard.
it's
And
tough.
with kids, you feel like you can't be the mother you want to be or the father you want to be because of your diagnosis. And that's another thing to grieve and work through. And I know I really struggle with that myself. My daughter was also two when I was diagnosed. And I really thought that I was going to be taking away things from her with my diagnosis. And I was surprised to see what she gained with my diagnosis. And that actually ended up being a really great learning tool for all of us.
I completely agree with that. And I think at first I felt really angry about that feeling, if that makes sense. Like, not only the feeling that I was scared I was going to lose things, of course, but also this sort of anger because I had a lot of people in my life, not people who had been through it, but people that I don't think wanted to experience that grief with me, say everything's going to be fine. It was like this super heavy layer of positivity, which I know was well intended, but in the moment, you're like, actually, things are horrible right now, and I can't see out of this. And so I think allowing yourself that moment of, I really just need to be in this pain right now so that you do feel it, because it's important, because you can't get to that point of now I'm looking at this and I'm like, wow, I have gained so much insight to things I never would have before. I've been able to find so many new ways to do things that I wouldn't have had to adapt to before, which is it a party that I can't hear well and when it no, but at the same time, you that's the human condition. You figure it out. No matter what happens, we are programmed to like figure it out on like a animal based level, I think, you know. So it's tough because I feel kind of, you feel this guilt too because like I'm here talking to you, my I feel I'm at the YMCA, I get to work out today. um I had another baby. There's things that have happened that have been such a wonderful experience for me, and that's not the experience that everyone has. And so realizing too that like we never know, you know, tomorrow. I think this has been the biggest thing I've learned is like we just don't know. Things change all the time. I've had radiation at a young age, which we'll get into, but like there's a question mark for everyone, no matter what you do, no matter whether you have a brain tumor or not. And so realizing that the value you have in each day and trying to be more present for my children in ways I wouldn't have before. You know, I wouldn't have been as aware of the preciousness of each moment. And that, you know, prior to 30, I just turned 30. Um, I think that's something that I wouldn't have gotten until a lot later in life and maybe missed out on certain things. So
I totally agree with that. And I think learning how to take the good and the bad, right? Because it's not all just positivity and optimism and wonderful, obviously. Like it's a really rough
right.
thing and it's a really hard thing, but also not throwing out the baby with the bathwater, like
Yeah.
seeing the good moments in the midst of a hard time.
Because you have to. Like that's the thing I think that because I was really, I mean, I was like, hey mom, I'm coming over to cry on your couch. Here's my kid. I don't want him to see me like this. And I just sat there and cried because that's what I needed in the moment. You know, it's like I needed to communicate what exactly I needed in that moment. And it was literally just to be sad and to feel sad for myself and feel, you know, have a bad day. And then I was able to be like, okay, I got that out of me now. What are we going to do about it? And then I went research happy, very, maybe like a little too research happy, but that's my way of dealing with things. I want to be very informed. I think that's not everyone. Um, you know, obviously we're lucky to have, there's actually so many, I've realized how many great treatment centers there are across America. I mean, there's a lot of, and hopefully it just continues to get better with options for people. But um, I don't think it's a bad thing to just nip it in the bud and deal with it in the way you feel comfortable. But for me, my language is like I want to dive deep. I want to learn as much as I can. So that's what I did.
That's great. And, like you said, that is a benefit of this particular diagnosis is that a lot of times you have time. And so you can take that space to come to terms with it and to make a decision you're comfortable with and to find the right doctors and the right treatment facility because, it is rare. And so you can't just go to any old neurosurgeon and expect
Right.
that they know about them or that they're going to be
Yes.
the best option.
Absolutely. And I think that's my biggest piece of advice because that's the thing is, I mean, I reached out to a handful of people, had different conversations with people who had different types of treatments. And the biggest resounding nugget of like baseline advice was just find someone who does this often, find someone who is good at this particular surgery, and you're in good hands because, there are a lot of really good doctors, but this can't be like something they've done once or twice. This should be something that they like are very well versed in because I mean, when you're dealing with nerves, I didn't even know what a vestibular nerve was prior to getting this diagnosis. Like, I guess I like kind of knew, but I didn't realize how all of these things connect and how these are tiny little things that you need someone who lives and breathes this to a certain degree.
Absolutely.
So
So tell me about choosing radiation and why you made that choice.
this was like the hardest decision I've ever made in my life because once again, I was like, okay, um, this feels like something not a lot of people my age were doing. Um, it's not, and it's tough because there's so many different things being said on social media that are not like study backed. And so my husband's from England. He moved to the States when he was 11. And I was really impressed when we went over there to visit. I learned a little bit about like his sister actually had brain cancer, very, very rough time for his family. So I knew a little bit about the medical system there just from, hearing things. And so I got interested in some of the studies there. And I found out through a friend that I made online that we still talk, that there's actually a place there that they deal with benign tumors specifically. Like there's places there that like have all this data that we don't have because they have more like clear information on their population, and more follow-ups and things like that. And so I found that interesting. And I've looked into, English or studies with the NHS, even for like my pregnancies and stuff, just because I like the data that I could see. Um, and I found out that like a lot of people actually had pretty good results with Gamma Knife, whereas I was just hearing a lot of like, oh, don't do that, you're too young here, which I can understand the argument for that. Like radiation is not like something you want to just like go do for fun. But obviously, but I did see really good information that made me feel comfortable when at first I was just told like, no, 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 don't do that. Um, this is kind of, I guess, like mildly controversial, but I feel like surgeons like surgery and radiologists like radiation. Like that's their craft. That's what they want to do. If you go to, um, you know, uh, you go to a baker to get a cake and you go where you want to go to get your service done. Right. And so, um, it's tough because I think as a patient, you just want someone to tell you, like, okay, what do I do? Like, I'm not a doctor. I didn't go to school for this. It's scary
Yes.
because there's still so much I don't understand about radiation. Um, just because am not a scientist. I don't know, understand it. But there's a lot that I did find in literature that felt more concrete to me. So I think just like if you're the type of person that wants to put on that research cap, and there is stuff you can find, whether it's surgery based or radiation based, that I think facts give comfort versus just feeling like, oh no, about things. Because I think even with surgery, like there's so many people that have really great results and it can feel, you read like the worst outcomes and it just feels horrifying. And so I was really actually persuaded against radiation by um, certain entities. And I understand fear with that, but I actually am really happy with my decision thus far because it did not interrupt my life in the way that I know surgery would have, for me personally. Because, sorry, I'm trying to make this like not super long winded, but I have a huge fear of surgery. Like it is something for me in my heart that like I don't think it bothers everyone exactly the same. I know it's scary regardless, but for me, it felt like the end of my world. Like I don't think I could have gone through with surgery personally in my heart unless it was the only option for me. And so for my mental health, the fact I had this other option I knew I could live with that better. And I think that's what it's all about is like what's best for your physical health, of course, but also what's best for your mental health. How are you going to be able to navigate this best for you and for your family? And because I had to be there for my son. Um, my husband's work hours are insane. My family, I know they would have tried, but I didn't think they had the capacity to handle that. And so I didn't feel comfortable doing that unless it was my only option. Um, I spoke to quite a few different people. I ended up going to Dr. Konziolka in New York just because you feel it. I think I've heard that from a lot of people. You interview different doctors, which I think is great, no matter what a diagnosis you have is. Talk to a handful of people. If you can, if you ask them, can I record this appointment on a voice memo? So important because in that moment, you're terrified. You're trying to ask questions and it just feels like it went in through one ear and out the other for me. So recording those and making notes and sitting with them was really important for me. Um, and I felt really comfortable with Dr. K. He's at NYU Langone. I flew out. I got it done, flew home the next day. So that was the decision I made. It was not an easy decision. The night before I cried and was like, what have I done? But you know what? Like, other than being tired and it's not this way for everybody, to be fair, everyone's different. My tumor had swollen to, or grown at the time, to about 2 centimeters. That's kind of big for radiation, from what I've heard from people. It's on the larger end of what's considered appropriate for that treatment. Um, so when I got it, I was like, oh boy. Um, by the way, feel free to interrupt me if I'm tangenting too far down the road here.
No, you're doing great. I was
Okay.
gonna say really fast that I totally agree with what you're saying earlier about radiation and people's perspectives on it. And it really does vary by country. For example,
Yes.
in Canada, unless the tumor is too large to safely radiate, they always radiate. They never operate. And so it's one of those things where I feel like the next generation is really going to have like really great data and like really good
Yes.
information that we just don't quite have yet. We're just starting to get it.
Right.
And doctors will even give you very conflicting information. Like you will go to one doctor and they'll say, "Yeah, you should be a great candidate for radiation," and the next doctor will say you're too young for radiation. And
Right.
so it's one of those things that's difficult to through, but I
Yes.
1000% agree with what you said about picking what's right for you. That was
And
actually the best advice that my doctor gave me, the ENT who diagnosed me. He said, "Ultimately, pick the treatment choice that you can live with and then don't look back."
that's beautiful. Yes. And that's essentially because I'm from Dallas area in Texas and I went to UT Southwestern when I first got diagnosed. I saw Dr. Coots and he was very like so supportive. I mean, he was just like, this is all the information that I can give you that I have knowledge on. This is what I feel. I talked to their neurosurgeon as well, and I felt like I had a lot of people listening to me and giving me support, and then telling me that this is my life and this is what I need to do what I'm comfortable with. And so I think at the very least, finding a doctor that will do that for you, what they told, give you that honesty, but also autonomy,
Yes.
um, is
Yes.
huge.
So you were saying that you did really well right after radiation. Did you end up with much for symptoms at that time?
You know, I will say it wasn't the most comfortable thing that's ever happened, but I think I was so scared of surgery that I was like, you know what, do whatever you need to do. The frame, I had the four screws and it's a lot of pressure on your head, but I was feeling good. They had me well taken care of. They gave me anti-anxieties and pain medications, and I felt really um well cared for. So that's so important too, obviously, no matter what you're having done. So I will say that definitely took the edge off. I don't remember a whole lot of it. I do remember saying that when they asked me what music I wanted for my treatment, I said Shania Twain. I don't know why. I don't know why I like her, but it was like so random. And so I remember being in there and kind of like just bopping to Man, I Feel Like a Woman. It's fun. You don't actually feel anything when you're getting the radiation. You're just kind of like, what? I'm stuck here. But it wasn't scary because I had the anti-anxieties that were doing their job. And then I went home, took a or home. I was in a hotel, took a nap. My husband and I got some pretty dang good Italian food. And then we flew home. It was just kind of like I think I just felt really overwhelmed because it was more emotional at that point because it felt like, wow, I've worked up to this treatment. I blew it out of proportion a little bit because I had scared myself so much. And I think people, once again, are so different. It's kind of like if you think it's going to be no big deal, sometimes it's worse. But for me, I was just like, did that really just happen? So now I started my processing phase of like, I can actually think now I'm on the other side of this. And I think a lot of people say that is like, once you choose your treatment, you feel better. Once you have your treatment and you can actually just start healing, it's like, oh, okay, even if it's hard, I've heard people in surgery, they're like, okay, at least I'm over that damn hill. Um, so that was relieving. I was really tired. I think part of that was mental exhaustion. And then also just, I traveled to New York and back. And I hear that frequently of like, you'll be kind of worn out. There was steroids in my system. There were things that my body was trying to sort out. I slept a lot. Um, the next couple of days, I was taking my son to school. Um, Things kind of went back to normal. I will say, I felt a little bit like I had not quite as sharp cognitive. Uh, like my memory felt a little fuzzy. Just some things I felt like I was healing,
Mhm.
but nothing that was concerning. Like I was driving fine. Everything was fine. It was just sort of like didn't feel quite like myself. I lost more hearing about 6 months later.
Okay.
They, because I was told to promptly let them know, they gave me steroids. It did go back to my baseline. So I'm not fully deaf in my right ear. If I'm listening to the Beatles or something, I'm like, where is it? Because it's missing. So I put your headphones in mono, friends. Um, yeah. So, but it's useful to me. I know there's a big difference, even just sensory wise, of like knowing that someone's driving, where is it coming from? It still helps me a bit in that way. But it did come back to that baseline. Um, Other than that, I would say it's just the emotional roller coaster of having to continue to go get the damn MRIs. It's like no matter whether you have surgery or not, scanxiety, as they call it, is so real
It is so real.
because
So
this is forever.
how long ago was your treatment?
It was in November of 2023.
Okay.
My first scan was, I was actually pregnant when I got my first scan. We did not do gadolinium, so I was not able to see as much as I would have liked to. My second daughter um, was not planned, but it was at a safe interval. It was right around the time they told me it was okay. They say, I think things vary, but they say about a year is usually good to kind of just like give things some time. Um, and everything went well, but I got that scan and it had swollen to like 2.3. And that scared me a lot because I was like, oh, I screwed up. This was not the move. But waited it out, had my baby. Everything went great. She's healthy, smiley, wonderful. So great. And I was able to deliver, without complications. I didn't have to do anything specific for the tumor. And so I'm grateful for that. The next scan, I was not expecting to have this happen. I was so nervous. I was like, oh, it shrunk almost in half.
That is
Almost in
amazing.
half.
That is such great news.
It was like it was 1.5. So it's smaller than when I got diagnosed. And it's not giving me this like pressure pain I was having. And I think I still am in shock that it happened that quickly. And I'm obviously, you always feel like you're worried about the other shoe. But that was shocking. And when I got on the Zoom call with my doctor, he's like, oh, he's so excited. He's talking to the tumor board, being like, we're so excited for you. We're all talking about this. This is wonderful. So if I can be someone that provides that data, that felt cool to me because I had a baby, all these things happened that can be useful to someone else. And so that has felt very, very cool.
That's amazing. I'm so happy for you. That's
Yeah.
great news.
I'm very
And
grateful.
just to clarify for anyone who's watching, with radiation, shrinkage is like the best case scenario. It doesn't always shrink. The real
Right.
goal is to arrest growth, and swelling is normal. And
Yes.
that's like an expected part of the process is to have
Mhm.
swelling and then for the swelling to hopefully stop and
Right.
nothing to continue.
Right. And it's kind of like a how do they explain it? So you sometimes see with the gadolinium, because a lot of people say like, oh, do I have to have the gadolinium, this and that? It shows you more of the I guess structure of the tumor. So you can see in the middle of mine where it's has that necrosis starting to kind of collapse on itself. And the way they explain the swelling was if you throw like a rock at glass, like it kind of shatters the glass or whatever, like it kind of like that's why it swells sometimes because it's irritated. You threw something at it and now it's like, whoa. And then as it not heals, but sort of just it's ideally will either stop or kind of just start shriveling.
Yep.
But yes, some people don't have the shrinkage. Some people have dramatic shrink. It's just everyone's body is different. And that's the difficult part too. And that's why I think it's so important to say, you got to do what works for you. Because at the end of the day, we don't know, you know?
Right. Right.
And
And
that's
there's
tough.
no like specifically perfect answer, like you were
No,
saying before. There's no right answer. There's just choices. And that's the hard part.
I know. And at least hopefully in the future, this we have more options because I think as people are starting to use MRI technology more, I remember 5 years ago, I maybe a little bit longer, I had twitching that came and went, and I had some numbness in my face. I went to the hospital. They told me I was anxious. It sucked. And so you feel sort of this embarrassment of like, oh, I guess I'm like losing it. I probably had it then. I probably had this tumor for a hot minute because these tend to grow slowly. Mine started growing a little faster around diagnosis. But if you feel like something's wrong, don't let someone convince you that you're just anxious. I think, a lot of women get that too. I think it's this sort of narrative that like you have this hysteria. No. If you feel like something is wrong, if it's not great, but there's nothing wrong with finding someone, you have to find someone who will listen to you.
Yes,
Like
absolutely.
regardless of the problem, you need a doctor who will listen to you and
Yeah.
will test everything that needs to be tested. And hospitals are not, I didn't realize hospitals are not the place for that. Like, yes, it's good if you have an issue, of course, go. But if they say they're busy, they have so much stuff going on. I was living in LA, there it was schmacked in there. I should have in my heart been like, I'm not gonna push myself off like this. I'm gonna go follow up with this. It's so important if you feel like something is wrong, find someone who will listen and get to the bottom of it. Because best case scenario, great, you're fine. But if not,
Yeah.
it would have been nice to get something done about it before it was bigger and not lost my hearing, ideally, which I will say, this doesn't always happen. Sometimes your hearing, you might lose it the next day after radiation, you might lose it years later. Mine has stayed at what it was pre radiation. It may, I've been told it will likely diminish over time, but right now I have it still there, bed. And that has been a win for me. And I think knowing that there's that possibility and knowing that I went to someone who was able to explain how they were going to approach the tumor to try and save what was there was very helpful.
Yes. That's wonderful. And I mean, the more time you have the hearing, the better, right?
Right.
Like if you have to deal with it later, you have to deal with it later, but at least you have
Right.
it now.
Yeah. If
And you
you
didn't have,
take a win.
right. And you didn't have any problem with like facial paralysis or any sort of changes there.
Around the time that I had, which obviously I then found out that it was because it was swelling, but around the time that I had the hearing loss further, I did have more facial spasms. Um, and I've always had some asymmetry, but everybody has asymmetry. I think it's tough when you're concerned about this to like really hyperfixate on your face. Um, I remember after radiation just being like, I can smile still. Like you test yourself all the time because it's scary, you know. It's not, nobody wants to go through that. It's not something that is eh, but once again, I've also seen people that have, because research McGee, and I've seen people who have had facial paralysis that got the reanimation surgery, and there's every year there's more coming out, and I think with more and more people getting diagnosed, which is unfortunate, but we're once again using MRIs more frequently. People are getting more care, which is beautiful. Um, I hope that that creates more studies into this and more awareness, like with what you're doing, because that technology is getting better too. Like I really do think, and I'm not trying to be toxically positive, but like I really do think that there's always, you can find ways to adapt, and you can find, whether it's just figuring out how to conduct your life in a way that works for you, or find someone who can, give you some different options. Like there's avenues.
Absolutely.
So
So I was just wondering if you wanted to share at all about what it's been like going through this as a musician and how that sort of like impacted your life.
yeah, I think one, it's ironic. Um, it's like the one thing my whole life that I have clung to sort of felt like it was being taken from me. Um, and that sucked because I was like, really? Like this? Um, and I think once again, that grieving thing, like yeah, it does suck. But at the same time, because like I said, there's, when I play piano, I actually put an earplug in because the decibel makes it sound like someone's a robot in my ear. Like it's very annoying. Or like when my children are screaming, that's it. It's this wonderful layer of like, ah,
Yeah, sound sensitivity, which people don't think of with hearing loss. My husband is always like, "Why are you turning down the music?" And I'm like, "It hurts. I have to turn it down." And he's like,
oh
"But aren't
yeah,
you deaf?" And I'm like,
the
"Yeah, no, but it hurts."
level the level of sound overwhelm is like different, and it's nice though because what are those, I forgot the name of them. They're in a little circle
Oops.
case, loops. Yes, I love those because I can put them in, like, let's say my kids and their friends are playing and they're all being really loud. That's beautiful. I love that for them. They need that. But the loops have an I don't know if there's probably different kinds, but the ones I have just lighten the noise for me a little bit, so it's more palpable. It's like you can be involved, you can go to the concert, whatever, and be a part of it, but not feel like you're being like assaulted by sound. So
That's
it's
exactly
just
it.
adaptive. Yeah, like I've adapted. I've found ways when I'm mixing things. I have a friend that I send things to, and I'm like, can you make sure this is right? Because I have no idea. But I look at the sound waves versus try and rely on what I'm hearing. Like there's so many ways that I've like I try to be a problem solver. It's like, hey, there's a problem. Let's figure out how to solve it. And I'm grateful that we have. Also, is it too loud in the background?
No, you're fine.
Okay, cool. Um, you know, we're lucky that we have certain technologies that give us some options, because I think if I didn't have any hearing in that area, I'd probably try like the cross stuff. Like there's things that aren't as great for music, because I hear from friends that like, hey, yeah, the hearing aids kind of make music a little bit wonky. But if you're at a restaurant, like there's things that can be really helpful from what I understand. Um, I will say too that like with music, I don't like loud anymore. Like I'm more into the acoustic thing than I was in previously into like the heavy rock stuff. Like it feels more comfortable for me because I can, I guess, not feel so overwhelmed, which is okay with me. Um, I also, when I'm tuning my guitar, like I can feel the vibrations in a different way that I didn't really like even notice before. So it's all like, I don't know. I've tried to position myself in this sort of like explorative way of like, how can I find a path here that I wouldn't have thought about otherwise? Is that kind of cool? I've met a lot of really awesome musicians that have like, whether they were born with partial deafness or ended up with an issue, or people that have like other disabilities that they're just like, okay, I'm going to figure it out. And I'm like, heck yeah. I mean,
That's
human
awesome.
beings are amazing.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. Well, Zoe, I so appreciate all of your stories you shared today and the mixture of struggle and hope and the ways that you've adapted and the different tools you've got in your tool belt. I'm glad you're doing so well. And I just really appreciate you making the time to be on the podcast today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you and everything that you did showing up for me when I was diagnosed. You were so helpful. And yeah, I hope that this can help somebody else feel less alone, because that's the biggest thing is realizing that like when you don't feel like an island, things really do get better.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me.